2014. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. We're still in the special broadcast this morning. It's day 43 of Operation Protective Edge. Israeli and Palestinian negotiators agreed late yesterday to extend a temporary ceasefire in Gaza by 24 hours to conduct more talks on a long-term truce. The 5-day ceasefire had been set to expire at midnight local time last night. Meanwhile, the Shin Bet has revealed yesterday that it uncovered and successfully disbanded a Hamas cell which had planned to topple Abbas and take control of the West Bank. According to Israeli intelligence, the cell had plotted to carry out a series of attacks on Israel and thus destabilize the security situation. The Palestinian president has ordered an investigation into the issue, saying the report could severely impact the unity pact signed between Fatah and Hamas. With me this morning is Tal Shalev, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent. Good morning, Tal.
Good morning.
Oren Nahari, Foreign Affairs editor from Channel 1. Thank you for being with us. And Amir Oren, senior defense correspondent for Haaretz newspaper. Thank you for being here. Tal, let's start with you. Late last night, you get word, of course, of an extension of the ceasefire. Both sides, it's in their best interest, of course, to continue, but it's only for 24 hours.
Yes, the Egyptians did get an extension of only 24 hours. I think they were hoping for a longer extension, but that's the least they could get at the moment. And it was a very tense night, I think, but it was a rerun of a few nights we've had in the past month and a half. And when negotiations in Cairo do take a much more intensified pace, and it's not, there's a lot of miscommunications running. There's a lot of headlines and statements that you don't really know what to make upon, but there is some the facts are that there has been some progress in Cairo, and the Egyptians just needed, at least they think they need just 24 hours to finalize the deal. And at the moment we're talking about a very, very modest deal, one that probably includes at the first stage lifting a small lifting of the blockade, some easing of the blockade, and a ceasefire, end of hostilities, and only later on will major issues be discussed. It's not clear that the Hamas will accept this kind of agreement. The demand for seaport and airport, which has been their key demand, has been it is not mentioned in the first stage, of course, of this initiative. Well, from Israel's point of view, not, but again, there have been a lot of drafts circulating in the media, especially the Palestinian and Arab media, regarding the ceasefire agreements. They all come from the Palestinian side. They don't address many of Israel's demands, so it's hard to know exactly how much truth there are in these initial agreements that are being circulated. But again, we'll know again today, probably between 11 and 12. We'll probably have another rerun today. At 9:30, we'll have a Palestinian official saying we're very close to a deal, and then the Israelis will not react. The Hamas will say we're not close to a deal. And the reactions that are coming today from a Hamas spokesman are not very optimistic, saying that we're far away from an agreement. But every statement, I think, in these frameworks should be taken very limitedly, because there's a lot of pressure. A lot of these statements are exactly aimed at putting pressure on the sides. And again, there's still a last-minute effort to try and extend the ceasefire for a more long-lasting temporary truce, or a long-lasting deal that will include end of hostilities from both sides. We're
going to get to the internal pressure in just a moment, but Oren, of course, there's obviously international pressure, even though we're probably less hearing about it in the media here in Israel. We're more hearing about internal pressure within the cabinet and so forth, but the Americans are still in the background orchestrating it. Maybe with the Egyptians, we're not really seeing a forefront of American officials here all the time.
I'm not sure that the word orchestrating is accurate, since the Americans, after the huge energy and time that Secretary Kerry and President Obama invested in trying to bring peace to the Middle East, and we see the consequences all around us, the major players, some of them are absent. The Russians used to be a major player in the Middle East. They are no longer here, not to mention China and other countries. So we are left the European Union and the United States, both of them coming forward with the usual solution of a fat check account, and perhaps putting some supervisors, each one saying that they can propose some sort of let's say, a border patrol of some sort of other in the passages to Gaza, a suggestion that Israel rejected outright. So we are left with turning to our good intentions, hoping that peace will be, or at least some sort of truce, or at least some sort of agreement without a truce. And that's basically it. They pressure Israel up to a point, especially, I presume, if fire starts again, not as senior defense sources said, that attrition will be answered by huge bombardments. It will not happen. I don't see it happening with The Hague illuminating in the forefront.
The Hague and the UNHRC.
And UN, of course, and the Chavez Commission, etc., etc. I don't see it coming. I see some huge tiredness of everybody involved, but not more than that. Nobody can pressure Hamas outside perhaps Turkey and Qatar and their internal rifts. And Israel, okay, the United States appeals and Secretary Kerry comes. We have elections in the United States in 3 months' time. Everybody thinking about that and the consequences. So Israel is again a weapon in American internal politics and vice versa. We have to remember that's basically it.
Although, of course, Amir, Netanyahu is going to be succumbing to any kind of internal pressure, as Oren said, maybe the international pressure is going to be subdued because the world has other items to deal with. Internally, he has a lot of items to deal with. Yesterday, he was in Sderot and told the residents there, you have to stand up and keep on being strong against this wave, something that many in the public don't want to hear anymore.
The last person or next to last person who heard from Netanyahu the wise counsel patience was Silvan Shalom when he asked for Netanyahu's support when he ran for president. And he has become, or he has returned to be, a bitter enemy of Netanyahu's. The residents of Sderot are sick and tired of being counseled to be patient. They've been patient for the last 14 years, and they are not going to take just going back to the pre-operation reality.
Do you see an alternative militarily?
There is no real alternative because Israel doesn't want to pay the price. However, as Oren mentioned, there is no energy left in both sides to resume fighting. It's just like after a marathon run, and even though Netanyahu may be an Ironman who after a marathon run can also bike and swim, most Israelis want some respite from what happened here over the last 2.5 months, starting with the abduction of the 3 youth. Ever since June 12th, this country has been on a war footing and almost on a war frenzy. And people need some holiday from that before they resume the normal lives of Israelis fighting and protecting themselves. So yes, it was protective edge, but now people are on edge. They don't want to be protective, and Netanyahu is sensing that he may, for external consumption, have these statements along with Ya'alon, we will strike back, we will deter you, but deep down everybody knows here that it is not time for any new operation.
All right.
I'd like to add something that perhaps is connected, but perhaps not, to the external pressure, or that people came to Netanyahu, to the State of Israel, to whoever, and said, even internally, we have to give the Gazans some vision. We have to give them somewhere to look at, which is not exactly the here and now, but here you can live in the future. You can live some sort of normal life. So the lifting or semi-lifting of parts of the blockade, something to look upon to see, look, this is what quiet and perhaps truth and perhaps even peace will bring you in the future. The big question, of course, as always, is could it be done before the operation and not after? Right. I presume, continuing Amir's saying, I don't think that if anybody would come to the government of Israel, to the cabinet, a month and a half ago, and said, look, after a round of very heavy fighting with Hamas, this will be the outcome that Israel would want, not only forced to sign, but would want, I don't think anybody would have thought of that.
I also think there's a misperception on the Israeli side in many ways that easing the blockade and opening the crossings or expanding the fishing zone, that will be satisfactory for Hamas and the residents of Gaza. This is not what they want. They want to be open. One of the big questions is the Rafah crossing that has nothing basically to do with Israel. But there is, Israel now is going on a very, at least it seems like it's signaling to going to a very minimum lifting of the blockade, some easing of the restrictions. This is not enough for the Gaza residents and the Gaza civilians. On the contrary to what Israel is saying or was hoping, that the protective edge will make them uproar against the Hamas leadership and against the Hamas rule. When you speak to the Hamas, to Gaza residents, and I spoke to one yesterday, they do not see Hamas as responsible for the horrible death toll. They see Israel responsible for the death toll. And this is, I think, something in the logic of Israel might not come through as the Israeli government is expecting it to come through.
At the same time, though, we're hearing from many Israeli officials, also on the record and off the record, that why is Israel waiting for a few Hamas officials to decide the future of the ceasefire? Something that, Oren, you brought up earlier, that we could have perhaps ended this a month and a half ago, but now we're in this situation of almost game theory of chicken.
Yeah, well, what could have been done? So many things could have been done, but did not happen, unfortunately. And again, Israel is dragged, kicking and screaming to the table. And Israel, from the fifth day, if I'm not mistaken, of the operation, before the ground entry, asked for a ceasefire. Before the ground entry, before the tunnels, before everything. So again, yes, there is a lot of logic with the suggestion that's saying, okay, why do we have to wait for the Hamas? Why do they have to wait for them setting the agenda from day one of this operation? Okay, we want to give the Gazan this. Okay, let's give them this and still hold some cards and not be seen as, again, as the weak side.
Of your own,
exactly.
The prospect of what would be perceived as a bad agreement is obviously anathema to Netanyahu. He wouldn't be able to push it through his cabinet and through public opinion. Better for him to have some reality without any framework, without any title. Simply, this would be the Scarlett O'Hara solution. Tomorrow is another day. So yesterday we had some negotiations. Nothing happened. The ceasefire almost expired. It did not. Tonight, as Tal said, it will almost expire. And perhaps in due course, people will forget that we are in the middle of a series of ceasefires. They will just go on living their lives. But the most important thing is for the Gazans to have a stake in the continued state of no war, even if there is no peace. And there were earlier episodes, for instance, the war of attrition with Egypt, where at first Israel thought that obliterating the cities along the Suez Canal would work for its deterrence. Later it regretted it and came to understand that had the economy thrived there, had the hundreds of thousands of Egyptians lived in Suez, in the Ismailia, it would have been better for it, and the chance of war would have been lessened. And Israel is now relearning this lesson, that it is better for it. This is not, you mentioned game theory, this is not a win-lose situation. In order for it to be a win-win game, it must give the people in Gaza a stake in their future.
But also the military is going to now, as it has been since the end of, it hasn't really ended the operation, always showing its successes up until now, meaning maybe as diplomatically we haven't received what we wanted to receive, but militarily, has Israel achieved any kind of success? We keep on going back over the numbers, but now in retrospect, would you say that it was worth it?
Well, first of all, regarding whether the operation ended or not, Netanyahu yesterday, on a visit to a naval base at Ashdod, announced that it is over, that Operation Protective Edge is over.
Yeah,
now,
we still keep on counting.
Well, this is, now it would be son of Protective Edge. You can reset the counter. The military gains have been minimal, and the price paid was heavy. It was not worth it. And had Israel been wise, it would have thought to itself that it's sufficient to do it from the air. Israel had 0 casualties as long it was the Air Force versus the rockets. Once it undertook ground action against the tunnels, it lost 64 soldiers killed, which is a very, very heavy price. And even though Netanyahu would say that years from now, looking back, we would see that it has deterred Hamas, this is doubtful. And all in all, Israel would have been better off had it not undertaken undertaken the ground operation.
I would like to continue with the thoughts of Amir. I totally agree. Two more things. One of them is that Israel paid a very heavy price, not only in 64 soldiers, it paid very heavy price in the international arena. The backing that we had from the European Union and the United States up to the middle and even later of the operation, with huge favoring statements from the EU and the United States, are no longer there, first and foremost. And one other thing, Amir mentioned the Yom Kippur War. In Yom Kippur War, if you judge it militarily and only militarily, Israel won a huge war. Israel won by all military standards, but we remember the Yom Kippur War with a heavy burden on our heart in Egypt and Syria, who lost the war, militarily speaking. Only militarily speaking,
right.
They celebrate.
I just think that the death toll on our side, the human death toll, was one of the reasons that Netanyahu did not expand the operation even more, even though there were constant calls from his political rivals to continue, and not even from his political rivals, it was from right and left, a lot of calls to continue the operation to a wide-scale takeover of Gaza. And I think that Netanyahu, we've been speaking about it, both Netanyahu and his defense minister, Ya'alon, come from a background that doesn't, they're not hasty in jeopardizing soldiers' lives. When you speak to some of Ya'alon's associates, he's been, in the army for years, and he has lost many close people. They say all those people that are they say all the ministers, all the hardline ministers that are calling to a full takeover of Gaza, they do not have to go to the bereaved families and explain what exactly was the goal of this war, what were we trying to achieve. And Netanyahu and Ya'alon knew they did not have an endgame strategy to taking over Gaza. There was not an endgame goal, and that was one of the reasons they did not want to launch a much more wide scale. But it's funny because while in the international community Netanyahu is perceived as a very forceful and very strengthful, like this was a very devastating operation from Israel, maybe an excessive use of force. Inside the Israeli public, he's portrayed as someone who was restrained, maybe even scared, and not tough enough to continue the operation, and this is his dilemma.
Also, the third member of the Troika, General Benny Gantz, the chief of staff, is also hesitant, reluctant, and it is ironic because earlier, of course, Netanyahu, along with his then defense minister Ehud Barak, wanted another general, Yoav Gallant, who was thought to be much more forceful on Iran. But had Gallant been in office now and would have pushed for a wider operation, he may have forced Netanyahu's hand. And it is, from Netanyahu's point of view, convenient to have a chief of staff who is in the same school of thought.
Yeah, but still, the problem is that both of them are totally, I agree with them, it's a problem. We have to arrange some sort of an argument. But still, the point is that Netanyahu and Ya'alon still has to come to 64 families and convince them that it was not for vain.
Right.
So you could have thought that perhaps, and I'm not saying it, and every life is dear to me of a soldier and everybody else, that perhaps if the cold price was higher, but the results, something more tangible, something that we can bring home, something that Netanyahu can push through the cabinet and the government and public opinion, we wouldn't be left with this very sad and very sour feeling in our mouth that it's not what we expected, it's not what should have been done.
Not only that, had they estimated that there would be so many casualties, perhaps they would have decided on a bolder move just against the leadership of Hamas, even underground, under Shifa hospital in Gaza. It would have taken perhaps less casualties on either side, and the results would have been much more devastating from Israel's point of view. And this, the way they went around about it was not creative, was not brilliant. There was nothing to it, just a couple of kilometers into Gaza, destroying
perhaps because of Netanyahu's own restraint, as Tal said from the beginning.
That's true.
That there was no actual plan. And even now, Tal, we see him yesterday touring the south, speaking to naval bases and residents, his rhetoric is still hesitant, meaning there is no really end goal that he can, quote unquote, serve to them and have them accept it.
Well, his rhetoric is very tough because that's the only solution he can resort to. Tough talk and continuing the tough talk. I'm not sure, again, you said, I'm not sure how much his message is really absorbed into the Israeli public. But yes, the South, and we've been talking about it, the residents of the South, he's in a problem. And the problem will also be if we go now into this kind of maybe unagreed or informal ceasefire, and there is a ceasefire, but tomorrow morning, or not tomorrow morning, the day after, next week, there will be one mortar shell on one of the Israeli communities on the Gaza border. Netanyahu will have to decide what will be the forceful response he's been talking about all this time. It's not an easy formula. It's not an easy equation to deal with, but he will be criticized the minute there's the first mortar shell in Israel. Right. He will be criticized by all of them, and they're planning a big campaign against it because they demand what they were promised. They were promised a long-lasting quiet.
During Netanyahu's ascent to power, during his personal rise, he was the master of the one-liner, of the soundbite. And he knows that whatever he says now will become a soundbite which is going to bite him. It will be played and replayed every time there is this mortar shell. His promises to act against the perpetrators will be played back at him.
So he's not.
Yes, he's cautious, especially after the Chief of Staff Gantz a couple of weeks ago said too much too early, and gave the illusion of quiet before it was in place.
And thus, Tal, as we have been speaking throughout, he has been separating himself from his other other security cabinet ministers, and we're seeing it in the media over and over, spoken about how all the other ministers are left in the dark.
Well, Netanyahu is a lone ranger in many ways. This is not you. Netanyahu always likes to have maybe one or two close ministers around him, and he has his inner circle of advisors that's his base. He's not a very social man. It's not a big surprise. There's no change. Netanyahu doesn't rely on many of his security cabinet ministers, following a series of leaks which there's a question about who exactly is responsible for them. But Netanyahu, yes, inside the security cabinet, all cabinet ministers are, maybe a majority of them, are very fed up with the way this has been conducted. Because in the past, as long as there was war, he was great. Every 2 days there was a security cabinet meeting. They were updated on what's going on in the fighting. The minute we got into the stage of diplomacy and ceasefire negotiations, they had nothing. They do not know anything about the negotiation policy. And we spoke about this earlier. The Haaretz Daily reports this morning that last Thursday in the cabinet meeting, the foreign minister, Avigdor Lieberman, asks Netanyahu, is there an Egyptian draft for an agreement? Netanyahu says, no, I don't. There are a lot of things going around. There are a lot of drafts going on. Then Avigdor Lieberman, the foreign minister, takes out of his bag or takes out of an envelope, well, look, I got this Egyptian draft of an agreement. So look how much mistrust there is inside this Israeli security cabinet. There's a lot of politics going on. Netanyahu has been stabbed in the back by many of these ministers throughout the operation, seeking to make a political gain on his back. But again, the question is, and if we put politics aside, is this, and I think probably Amir and Oren will be wiser on this, is this the right decision-making? I mean, even if Netanyahu is a lone ranger and he doesn't rely on his security cabinet ministers, the security cabinet does have a role, should be involved in negotiations, and there is something, I'm not sure, and this is my personal feeling, in Netanyahu and Ya'alon, I'm not sure there's someone there asking them the hard questions all the time.
Tal said that Netanyahu has been stabbed in the back. And of course, his cabinet is full of rivals and heirs apparent. He has no ally there. However, right now in Israel, there is a minor but semi-tragic case of an entertainer, a singer, who was rushed to a hospital with apparently self-inflicted wounds in his chest. Netanyahu he is full of self-inflicted wounds to his chest. He was not stabbed in the back. Even Netanyahu cannot stab his own back. It's very difficult.
And I'll continue to what Tal and Amir said. It is true that the cabinet, there are many voices and heir apparents and everything. I think there is a growing feeling that not only during the peace talks, but also in the cabinet meetings before, they were fed with the usual army tactics of here is bad option A and bad option C, so we'll be with B option, which is the minor one, which is the middle of the road one, which is the 2 kilometers entry to Sajaiya, right, and conducting this affair. So again, they feel that they've been led up with their noses, and still they are led up to a goal that nobody really understands, nobody really wants, and they are put aside like, okay, good boys, we, Ya'alon and Netanyahu, will get you there, don't worry. And they do worry, and they see their polls, and they see the politics, and here we are.
And it will, they will be paying probably a price, one side or the other, in the next campaign. Amir, talking about stabbing in the back, I'll keep on with that analogy. Yesterday, Shin Bet reveals that it uncovered a cell of Hamas that was planning to topple Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. What is the details there? Well,
the details are not exactly a military coup, as is the usual case in Arab countries and other places where battalions of armor or other troops circle the presidential palace and so forth, because there are 7 battalions of security troops trained by the U.S. military, so-called Dayton battalions, and they are apparently loyal to Abu Mazen. In this case, it was more indirect. The Hamas plan was to have a series of terror acts in Israel, much like they had over a decade ago. And the assumption was that Israel will strongly react against the Palestinian Authority, and the effect would be Abu Mazen's fall and Hamas taking over. So this sounds a bit awkward.
And is the timing of the Shin Bet revealing the investigation?
Obviously, because the mastermind after this plan has been in custody for more than 8 months. Right. And according to the announcement, only recently, when re-interrogated, did he reveal those plans. The same guy who was mentioned now, Salah Haruri in Turkey, was mentioned during the abduction of the 3 youths. So again, it is going to implicate the Turks. This is another side effect, but it doesn't really reflect on what Israel can do now vis-a-vis Hamas or Abu Mazen. The problems are still there.
Thank you, Amir Oren. Thank you, Oren Nahari and Tal Shalev, for joining me this morning. After the I-24 News headlines, we're going to be speaking about the Mosul Dam and, of course, the Islamic State militant organization. But first, we're going to go for some headlines, and we'll be back. Welcome back to I-24 News Morning Edition. We're still in a special broadcast this morning. It is Operation Protective Edge, day 43. But now we're going to say hello and good morning to the one and only Anthony Grant, who joins us daily to discuss the news you may have missed while scanning the headlines. Well, the rest of the world hasn't missed these headlines, and maybe just here in Israel we're overlooking some of them.
Right. Well, first of all, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And actually, thank you very much. Great to be here. And a story which actually kind of unifies some Israeli and Californian themes, as reported in The Guardian. This is an interesting drama unfolding in the port of Oakland. Picketers at this California port are keeping an Israeli ship from unloading. Looks like for the 2nd day in a row, this protest over what some of these protesters take objection to events in the latest round of violence in the region. And there's no firm idea of if the ship will actually be able to unload its cargo. It's actually not in the port itself, but it's sort of out in the water to a certain degree, but it's something that is obviously very controversial.
Right, and I've been seeing it now on my own Twitter feed. It's, I think, the 3rd day already. This is from yesterday, now it's the 3rd day already, and it's an Israeli shipping company, Tzim, which is a very big Israeli shipping company, cannot unload it. It's part of this, movement, of course, of the BDS.
Yeah, and of course, it's interesting this is taking place in Northern California, which, of course, if you go back into history, as far as Northern California, Southern California, protest movements, whether they're misguided or not, tend to take off in the Bay Area. So no big surprise there.
All right.
Anyway, people want to get their cargo, so let's hope that gets resolved soon. afternoon.
Okay.
Moving on to another hot spot, much hotter spot in the United States is Ferguson. And in Missouri, of course, we have this, actually from Twitter, breaking news here that police are apparently advancing on crowd of protesters with guns drawn, media order to stay in taped-off area. This is just coming in this morning, and of course the tensions there have been high and getting higher pretty much day by day since the August 9th shooting of the 18-year-old Michael Brown, under circumstances which are still disputed by different sides to the situation there.
And the National Guard has been called
in. The governor of Missouri called in the National Guard. There are there's police apparently even I think arrested a 90-year-old Holocaust survivor, you were saying, who was there also part of the protest. And again,
it's important to note that the protesters are not, a certain part of society. It really is, a wide spectrum of protesters, from Holocaust survivors, as we said,
to just to residents there who are up in arms, sometimes literally, about alleged police brutality, militarization of the cops, which is of course a huge nationwide American issue right now, which has been debated even in before this incident happened on August 9th. So that's something that is the media, of course, are very focused on, and it's kind of hard to keep up with the events as they're happening. But if we can, the Kansas City Star actually has which is a major newspaper in Missouri. This was also before that Twitter tweet that we just saw. Outside agitators, quote unquote, worsening the unrest in Ferguson, residents say. We have a picture there of what's come to be sort of a common scene in this suburb of St. Louis. Basically, aggressive police activity. Some are saying that it's gotten out of hand.
So people are coming from outside.
Yeah, apparently, it's not something. This has become one of those local issues that has gone national and international because of the players involved and the fact that it's the United States, and why is this still happening in 2014? So again. We're going to, I think, see by the end of today how the situation hopefully is diffused. But moving on to another headline related also to what's happening there, we have, this was actually from the weekend, Daily News, New York, just to show some of how the more sensationalistic headlines are coming up. Shot 6 times when that became clear. Even before, in advance of the autopsy by federal people coming up. That's a pretty sensationalistic but accurate headline, and again, just going to inflame the tensions even further. But again, it's the truth.
And it disputes, of course, what police had been saying up until now.
Right, and the fact that there's another. We have the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, an article which kind of like a think piece. Why did the Michael Brown shooting happen here? It goes into sort of the roots of the urban sprawl and problems with crime in this area of St. Louis, and again, the conflicting accounts. Was the guy only jaywalking and got into a scuffle with the cop? If so, you can understand a lot of that outrage. Was there more involved? It's a huge drama on all sides. Interesting article in Time by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, NBA All-Star player, now retired, but talking about, well, he says the coming race war not being about race, and basically very prominent Americans saying what's really going on here is looming class warfare. It's not so much black and white, but it's rich and poor. And his points are very interesting to read, and again, something that hopefully more people will read and study about what's going on as opposed to get into armed confrontation. But
meaning it's not, he doesn't want to take it back to the 60s and 70s when it was about race. He wants to actually say it's about social gaps between society.
Yeah, he even cites movies like The Hunger Games as being so popular because they touch a raw nerve, like a ruthless president in that movie who's sort of kind of tightening the belt around the middle class just to do anything to keep the rich happy, the 1%ers, so to speak.
Right.
So interesting thoughts on that, and to a certain degree they're quite valid, one might say.
Absolutely.
So the economic issues are always there. The Guardian again had an article of an opinion piece in Ferguson. The violence of the state created the violence of the street. So at times like this, it's pretty easy for the left-leaning papers to take pot shots at the United States, but in a sense it's also true, because if we look at something that happened in New York City over the weekend, papers in New York and Fox New York was reporting that 15 people were shot in New York City over the weekend, 2 were left dead. And these are the kinds of headlines that are coming out so often now that they've actually ceased to shock people, but it is quite shocking.
Right.
And
and many of them don't even reach the headlines. It's because because, of course, of the Michael Brown story that we're now, following up with other shooting incidents.
And, and most of these shootings, of course, they're not happening in chic Manhattan, but in disadvantaged areas where the rich-poor divide is just exacerbated by recent economic developments in the past few years.
What else?
On a different note, speaking about economy, the New York Daily News reported a little bit after the fact that the New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo, who of course is recently in Israel on a sort of a flash 2-day visit, had talked about a possible economic development summit with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Wow.
And, that's kind of encouraging
the light
news.
At the end of the tunnel,
it would be a great thing. Cuomo apparently said at one point that the Israelis are doing amazing things in high tech, which Israelis are. And in New York, of course, is kind of Silicon Alley, they call some pockets of New York City. Nothing really on Silicon Valley, but there's a lot of room for cooperation there. So.
Indeed. All right. Well, until that happens, there's a few things to happen. There's just a lot, just minor things.
We won't go into them at the moment.
Governor Cuomo did come to show solidarity during the operation, and then for that he did travel the country and saw Iron Dome and visited soldiers and so forth. Anthony Grant, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We're going to now go and say hello to Ali Waqid, our I-24 News senior Middle East analyst. Good morning, Ali.
Good morning,
thank you for joining us. Iraqi and Kurdish forces have recaptured Iraq's Mosul Dam from Islamic State militants, and the U.S. President Barack Obama said the U.S. had helped in the operation as U.S. fighter, bomber, and drone aircraft all took part in the strikes on the Islamic State positions near the country's biggest dam. Obama reiterated that the move was a, quote, major step forward, and the U.S. had begun a long-term strategy to defeat the militants. Let's take a quick look at the next report, and we'll continue from there.
Islamic State militants suffered their first crucial setback Monday morning as the Mosul Dam was reclaimed by Kurdish forces. The operation to take back the dam was the most highly coordinated among U.S., Kurdish, and Iraqi forces since American troops left Iraq in late 2011.
We are fighting a strong terrorist state, fully developed terrorists who have advanced weapons.
Combatants of the Islamic State had seized the dam on August 7th, hoping for a prolonged hold of the strategic facilities. But 15 airstrikes were launched by the U.S. near the dam in Mosul on Sunday in aims to assist the Kurdish ground offensive to recapture it.
ISIL cannot control any of our positions because they are strangers and they are deprived of anything related to humanity. Those are criminals.
President Barack Obama said in a letter to Congress Sunday, the failure of the Mosul Dam could threaten the lives of large numbers of civilians, threaten U.S. personnel and facilities, including the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, and prevent the Iraqi government from providing critical services to the Iraqi population. However, for Iraqis in the Mosul and the region, it may be too early to celebrate, as a U.S. defense official added that the military assaults in the city are scheduled to continue until the Kurdish forces retake the dam completely.
So, Ali, of course, when the Islamic State militants started to take over control over the region, Mosul Dam was one of those maybe turning points in the takeover, and that's when the Americans decided we're going to help out here.
Yeah, and the question is whether this operation led by the U.S. and the Kurdish and Iraqi forces is a new turn point in this conflict. Will, as Obama said, this would be a long-term cooperation between the Iraqi forces and the American forces, or will the United States stop here? Because if the United States is launching an operation against the Islamic State, this operation should be extended to Syria. Mm-hmm. We know that the Islamic State have bases in Syria, in the borders between Syria and Iraq. Supplies of the Islamic State are exchanged between Syria and Iraq.
It's a broken border.
And 3 days ago we saw that simultaneously the Syrian Air Forces strike against the Islamic State and the American Air Force strike against the Islamic State. Are we witnessing a new map of the region? region, or at least new calculation of the Americans. Does this mean that the Americans gave up their plan to see Bashar Assad disappearing from the Syrian scene? And second question, Yael, does the battle on the ground in Mosul will turn to a battle that the American will need to be involved, political battle between Kurds and the federal government in Iraq? The Kurdish are demanding to have more parts of the share of the oil in the region. They are demanding the central government in Iraq to pay some billions of dollars to the Kurdish state, and the American need to see whether their two allies, the central government in Baghdad and the Kurdish, disputing or finding a solution. The Iraqi central government is suspecting all the time that the Kurdish government in place in Kirkuk is trying to separate from the federation, is trying to separate from the federal power and government, and this is also a very important challenge.
Which is a challenge from way back when. It's not only from now.
Of course, and if the American will keep supporting the new Iraqi prime minister, this can be another turn point in the conflict in order to try to reduce the support of the Sunni tribes and the Sunni forces to the Islamic State. We are now hearing that some Sunni tribes and Sunni villages and cities are re-studying their position vis-a-vis the Islamic State. The Islamic State represented a kind of a support to the Sunni community when they were totally excluded from the political life in Iraq by Nouri al-Maliki. Now that there is the new
Iraqi
Haider al-Abadi, the new Iraqi prime minister, is a new hope for a better collaboration between Sunnite and Shiite, and this will, of course, have consequences over the support between the Sunni community and the Islamic State. So we are seeing maybe a setback of the Islamic State on the ground and in the region of the dam of Mosul. Does this mean that there will be a counter-attack of the Americans and the Iraqi to the city of Mosul itself, back to the forward to the borders with Syria, with very important support on the domestic political level, the integration of the Sunnite in the political life, which will take also some of the reasons that were used by the Islamic State, that we are fighting the war of the fight of the Sunnite community.
Right. But the question is, obviously, Barack Obama has been very quiet up until he did decide to put in humanitarian aid, first for the Yazidis and then now with the airstrikes on the Mosul Dam. He calls it a major step forward. Is there a long-term strategy that the Americans are pushing forward, maybe behind the scenes?
Is there a long-term change in Obama doctrine vis-a-vis the intervention abroad? We saw that the Americans didn't want, and they waited until the massacres of the Yazidis in Iraq and the Christians in order to intervene. Now, will the Americans get back to, with boot or without boots, in Iraq to try to strengthen the Iraqi central government against the Islamic State? What will be the position of the Americans vis-a-vis the Kurdish demands to separate from the central government? And are the Americans aware that a campaign against the Islamic State mean directly or indirectly strengthening the regime of Bashar Assad?
Ali Wakida, thank you for joining us. We're going to be coming back quickly after the next I-24 News headlines. We're going to be speaking about the Sainsbury supermarket chain in London. Welcome back. It's still Tuesday, August 19th, 2014. This is the Morning Edition. I'm Yael Wisner-Levy. Thank you for staying with us. We're going to go straight now to Ferguson, Missouri, to our correspondent from KMBC 9, Eli Rosenberg. Eli, thank you for joining us.
Yes, how are you?
We're okay here in Israel. We just want to know, of course, the latest from Ferguson. And we understand now it's the third day of riots in the streets. A National Guard has been deployed. What's the latest from there?
For a while tonight, it looked like it was going to be a pretty peaceful night, and that all changed around 9:30 Central Time here tonight, where crowd ran up on a police line. There was a heated exchange, and then all of a sudden, bottles and glass bottles were thrown overhead, landing on police. That escalated things. Smoke and tear gas was used yet again tonight to try and get the crowd to move. That was somewhat successful. This went back and forth for several hours tonight. Police would come into the crowd, grab someone, pull them behind the police line. Things would calm down for a few minutes, and then it would flare up again. In the middle of this, we had community activists and reverends and preachers begging and imploring the crowd to go home, to back up, to de-escalate things. And it would work for a little bit, and then things would get heated again. Been out here for now about a week and a half off and on, and I get the sense it's some instigators, a few people who are causing most of the problems. But in this mass of people, it's very hard to distinguish who's causing the problems and who's out here just to protest.
And Eli, there's a lot of reports that many outsiders of Ferguson have come into protest. Is that the feeling also on the streets, that it's not only locals that are protesting, but it's actually a nationwide almost protest?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to people here who have come in from Atlanta and Chicago and all over to kind of join the movement of people that are here. And a lot of them say, you know, they saw what was going on TV and they were moved to come to show support for Michael Brown's family. But there's also, talking to police officers, fear that there is another element coming from out of town, and that could be some of the instigators and the people who are causing these problems that have come in from out of town and are causing the majority of the headlines and the stuff you guys hear and the police escalations. Those people could be from out of town.
And we're also seeing, mainly from social media, who the people are that are protesting. It's a very wide range. It's not only, you can't really profile the protesters, can you? There are, you know, people of all ages and backgrounds coming out to protest.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We were here last Monday, you know, after that night of looting, and it was a small group, and it was talking to people. They were just people in the neighborhood who had come out, people who knew Brown's family or knew Michael, and, you know, even shopkeepers and people who worked in the area who had been looted last Sunday night, you know, were out there supporting the Brown family. But you talk to people now, and it is a variety of people from all over. And another thing to note today, you mentioned the National Guard is here. They're here in a very limited role. They are only guarding the command post, which came under attack last night from these mobs of people. Molotov cocktails were thrown at the command post. To set the scene for you there, big parking lot, about 400 police cars. This is where they're running the operation. So the National Guard is here, approximately 80 members, but they are just guarding the command post. So they were not at the protest tonight. They are mainly just up here at the command post where I am now.
And we're also hearing, of course, the Obama administration in recent hours getting involved as well. In retrospect, do you believe that these protests took the country, the state, and Ferguson itself by surprise?
I think Ferguson, first of all, very much so. It is an older community. It's a very proud community, kind of right outside of St. Louis, a small town, only a population of like 21,000 people, rather, 55 plus or minus a few police officers. So not a city that's used to such intense attention night after night after night.
Okay, Eli Rosenberg, the KMBC 9 correspondent, thank you for joining us there, and good night and a peaceful night, hopefully, there in Ferguson. And moving on, we're going to central London, where a central London supermarket chain, the branch manager, decided to empty the kosher food section, fearing violence from protesters who were gathered outside calling for a boycott on Israeli goods. The Holborn branch of Sainsbury's has since apologized for removing the kosher food from its shelves after it instigated an outrage on social media. To hear more about it, we're joined via Skype from London by our I-24 News correspondent there, Jonathan Sacherdati. Jonathan, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Neil.
We're going to take a look quickly at the next recorded conversation you had with Sainsbury's, but quickly, just give us the timeline of the events as you know it.
Well, on Saturday, a Twitter user called Colin J. Appleby posted pictures that he'd taken of the kosher goods chiller cabinet in the Holborn branch of Sainsbury's, where he said there was absolutely nothing on the shelves, and he put this picture up for all to see. So, of course, this prompted people to worry why they were removing these kosher goods, and I decided to give the Sainsbury's customer care line a call to find out what was behind the decision.
Okay, let's take now a look at this conversation that you had with a Sainsbury representative regarding the removal of the kosher food from their shelves.
How can I help you?
Hi, I'm just calling to inquire about your kosher section in the Holborn store, which I understand is completely empty of products.
No, it's not.
Well, I've seen photographic evidence that it is. Is there any...
There was a problem yesterday. There was one store in particular that decided to take off the kosher products because there was going to be a bit of a... Oh, I'm trying to think of the word. That's terrible. My mind just went blank. Somebody was going to try and cause an obstruction in the store. So rather than people come into the store and take kosher products off the shelf and whatever, the manager decided to shelf them, put them away until later on, and I can assure you they are all back out on the shelves and in the freezers.
Why is it considered a good reaction to remove products of interest to Jews from the shelves when there's going to be some sort of violent intervention, rather than to stop the violent intervention?
Anything like that, we certainly don't agree with anything like that, but at the same time, we can't have anybody coming into the stores and pulling stuff and throwing stuff about a shop floor. So
why don't you stop them doing that? If I told you I was going to go into the store and start trashing halal products from the shelves, would you remove them all?
Of course not, sir, as I say.
But that's what you did with the kosher products.
This was one store that decided to do that with the store manager, and it has all been rectified now.
So, Jonathan, we have been speaking about it in the past few weeks throughout Operation Protective Edge of this fine line between anti-Zionism in Israel and anti-Semitism. Corresponding kosher food with Israel obviously is crossing a line.
Of course, kosher food is not Israeli. Kosher food is food that meets the dietary requirements of observant Jews. And that's why people in the United Kingdom, especially the Jewish community, are distressed to see decisions like this, even if they're one-offs taken by one store manager in one branch of a very large chain like Sainsbury's. And you heard there in the phone call, which went on for a further few minutes, about 7 minutes in all, that there was a reluctance to apologize at first for this activity. There was a reluctance to admit that it was a mistake. And eventually the declaration was made that this was not a Sainsbury's-wide policy, that it was somehow an activity chosen so that it would save the chilled goods in case they were thrown off the shelves, and they would have had to have been destroyed according to safety regulations. But what is really worrying people here, and the columnist in the Telegraph website here, Brendan O'Neill, put it very well, is that this sort of acquiescence to bullying from violent crowds who are threatening a store like Sainsbury's is very threatening to the Jewish community, because even if the decision by Sainsbury's is not an anti-Semitic one, it's one that has an effect on the Jewish community, and that shouldn't be happening regardless of what people think about what's going on between Israel and Gaza.
Have you heard from the protesters themselves? Have they made any kind of reaction or set out any kind of response following your call to the Sainsbury representative?
I've not heard from anyone personally. In fact, the coverage that this has been getting has been rather surprising to me. It's gone viral, let's say, across much of Europe. And I can see that people are reporting on this phone call because, as I said, this rising anti-Semitism that's taking place here in the United Kingdom and, of course, across mainland Europe as well is such that people are very afraid. And when you hear individual cases like this, they don't necessarily point to policy decisions of a large store like Sainsbury's, but they do illustrate the many things that Jews in the community are feeling daily, are affecting their lives, which are somehow punishing them for perceived wrongdoings that this virulent anti-Israel crowd across Europe, which is often manifesting itself in violent ways, they're feeling these effects. And the fact of that is that there's a very unpleasant truth, which that anti-Israel protesting group needs to acknowledge as well, which is that within it there is a large group of anti-Semitic influenced activity. To target kosher goods in a shop or to even make the shop feel that you're targeting those goods is a problem. And there is something lying behind this undue prominence, this undue obsession with Israel that these crowds marauding across Europe are exercising. And that's, I think, what's making people very afraid here.
And you mentioned that these are lone incidents that have happened quite frequently throughout the operation, not only in the UK, but across Europe. The question is the Jewish community now in the UK going to take perhaps the initiative to prevent more of these cases, or is it still on a more of a defensive? We're waiting for these cases to happen and then we act.
It's a good point. In the Jewish Chronicle newspaper, a weekly Jewish newspaper that comes out here in Britain, there was a full-page advert taken out anonymously with an open letter to the so-called Jewish community leadership, criticizing them for their complete inaction in the face of this enormous rise in anti-Semitism. And that's the other part of the problem. The Jewish community at large feels very much like nobody is looking after it. There's a sense that the police and the government are not taking action when there is violent activity against Jews or against Jewish properties. And there is a sense that the Jewish leadership itself is not living up to its obligations, and it's not protecting Jews. It's not being vocal enough with government and with the police, insisting that Jews should be protected. Of course, if Jews don't feel they're being protected by the government and the police, and if Jews don't feel that their own leadership is looking after them, then they start to wonder what future there can be for them in this country and in Europe in general. And that's why we see statistics from polls showing that a huge number of Jews, a very large portion of the Jewish community, is thinking about its future in the country very seriously.
And we, of course, will be continuing to follow the story through you and your reporting. Thank you for joining us, Jonathan Sacerdoti from London. With me again is Anthony Grant. You're here with some headlines from the web.
Some headlines and some, interesting things afoot. Actually, Britain is a source of such depressing news these days. It's nice to see that some people are still paying homage to a very prominent, yet no longer with us, British Jew, and that would be Amy Winehouse.
Oh.
Yes.
What about her?
Well, Lady Gaga, who is not from London,
right.
has gone on Instagram kind of impersonating Amy Winehouse.
Yeah,
yes.
I did think that was Amy Winehouse for a second.
I thought it was too. In many ways, there's a lot of similarities. I won't go into all of those ones, but some are obvious. But apparently, Gaga was a very early fan of Winehouse and had a huge influence on her music.
Wow. So she just did it for fun, or is there a certain cause?
She did it for fun, also to kind of draw attention maybe to her impending Australian tour that she's going.
Yeah. Nothing's for fun. There's always a reason, huh?
Well, she's a slick marketer, that Gaga.
Yeah, she is. But she tweets like crazy. That's Instagram, I saw. But
But a little, and she's coming to Israel apparently. I believe in September, I hope.
Yeah.
So that can be exciting too.
And it hasn't been canceled yet.
Yeah.
Cross fingers.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen.
What else do you have?
Also, in entertainment news, a bit on a sad note, it was just reported this morning that Saturday Night Live announcer Don Pardo has passed away at the age of 96. 96. This is the guy, of course, for those who were living in a cave for centuries, live from New York at Saturday night, but in his inimitable voice. 38 seasons of America's most popular comedy program. And, of course, he was like the defining feature in many respects, of how people think of SNL, the introductory part.
Right.
So, 96,
96, 38 seasons?
Apparently 38 seasons.
38 seasons of, and think of how many cast members went through
and
those
he used
seasons.
to...
He was there.
He was there. He pronounced the most unpronounceable names with such aplomb and talent that it was like, wow, I wish I could, do that, but I can't.
Yeah.
But he was really
But live from New York, it's Saturday night, it's...
So who's going to do it now? I don't know.
I don't know. That's sad.
That's maybe Lady Gaga.
Please not.
Someone who won't, unfortunately. TMZ reporting, this is sad, but just want to bring it up there. Apparently, according to a very close source, Robin Williams' suicide was what they're calling spontaneous and not premeditated.
How do they know?
Well, apparently this source was speaking with Robin Williams just the day before the hanging, and was saying that he was talking about upcoming projects, as usual.
It's not evidence.
And well, if it's on TMZ, it has to be true.
Oh, got it. Do they have a video of it?
No, but the source, the confidant, as they call the individual, maintains that there was really nothing that seemed unusual, and I think people have been wondering, was this something that Williams was thinking about for a long time? And apparently, according to the source, that's actually not the case. So
that's another
very
huge sad story.
Going on to a happier Robin Williams note, Nintendo fans are asking the video game company to name a Legend of Zelda character after Robin Williams. And there's a petition online about 100,000 strong. Apparently, Robin Williams was a huge fan of Nintendo and The Legend of Zelda.
Okay.
Actually named his daughter after Zelda in that. I've never played it, but apparently he was a big fan. And the company is basically saying they won't rule out actually creating a character named for Robin Williams. So.
I'm all for it. You can add my name to the signature petition. Anthony Grant, thank you for joining us. We're going to be back very soon after these headlines from the I-24 News Desk. Good morning, and thank you for staying with us. We're now joined in studio by the Sport Magazine host, Jonathan Regev. Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning, Ed.
And by I-24 News correspondent, Gabby Tartakovsky. Gabby, you'll be with us in just a few minutes. We're going to start with you, Jonathan. Yeah. Rafael Nadal is out.
Yeah, U.S. Open is just around the corner. It begins on Monday. Defending champion and world number 2, Rafael Nadal, will not be there. He has not played since Wimbledon. He lost there in the 4th round, a very surprising loss. And ever since there were rumors if he will play or not in the U.S. Open, let's remember he is the French champion. He won the Roland Garros a few months ago. And yesterday he announced on his Facebook page that he will not play in the U.S. Open and will not play anymore in 2014. He has a wrist injury. He's done for the year, yes. He is suffering from a wrist injury, and he's going to be out for the rest of the year. And it is a big blow because he is one of the 2 major stars in the sport at the moment, together with Novak Djokovic. Djokovic against Nadal was the final in Flushing Meadows last year, and there were a lot of expectations to see a repeat of that final. Anytime one of the major big stars of the sport withdraws, so obviously it's a big blow to the sport, and it's a big blow to Nadal. He is one of the leading figures in the sport. He won 14 Grand Slams, but yet 9 of those 14 came in Roland Garros, which he is obviously the king of clay. Last year, he seemed to be the king of hard courts. Not anymore. Djokovic beat him in all the later matches in 2013. Now he's out of the U.S. Open. Obviously, major disappointment.
And of course, he's 28 years old, meaning if he's out until the end of 2014, how much of a comeback can we actually expect?
He can come back, and you know what? He can take example from the next guy we're going to speak about, a young and upcoming guy called Roger Federer, only 33 years old. How many times have sport analysts, including myself, have said, oh, look, he's...
Eulogized?
Yes. This guy is out, the younger guys are better. Roger Federer, he is probably the best tennis player in history, but people have said, look, he's old, he can't do it anymore. Guess what? Now that Nadal is out, Djokovic is probably not at his best. Federer is the favorite to win the U.S. Open. He made the final in Toronto in the Rogers Cup last week. He won the tournament in Cincinnati this week. We'll speak about Federer in a second. First, let's see the story by Michael Friedman.
Let's take a look.
Roger Federer has spent 302 weeks of his career at the top of the ATP World Tour Masters. With 17 wins in Grand Slam tennis, 22 Masters, he is considered by many as the best tennis player of all time. At 33 years of age, many analysts said he would retire since he cannot compete with the younger guys. However, the Swiss shows that he should be favored at the U.S. Open that begins next Monday. Last week, Federer had a difficult final against Jo-Wilfried Tsonga. Big Joe capped off his second ATP Masters title at the Rogers Cup in Toronto after an intense match, winning 7-5, 7-6. A week later in Cincinnati, Federer faced off against Raonic in the semifinal. The first set proved easy for the Swiss player as he ridiculed his opponent. The second set was just as easy and confirmed his place in the final after a 6-2, 6-3 showing. David Ferrer brushed off Julian Benautu 6-3, 6-2 to reach the final against the Swiss master. This was the first final between players 30 or over in a Masters final.
I played a good match, a good game, and well, nothing else, no? Now rest for tomorrow.
The conditions were ideal for Federer in this final with a quicker victory in his previous semifinal. In addition, he had a psychological advantage with an opponent against whom he had never lost in 15 games. With the edge on his side, the King took the final match 6-3, 1-6, 6-2, showing his talents in Cincinnati.
Great week for me, great year so far. Couldn't be more excited. I love this tournament here in Cincinnati. I've played so well here over the years, and now I need some rest, and I'll get ready for New York soon.
Federer played his 8th final of the year and will enter the U.S. Open as a fierce competitor after winning more matches than any other player in 2014.
So for all those that eulogized him, shame on you. He's going to be back.
Shame on us, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, Roger Federer is... And the one beautiful thing about Roger Federer, all those critics, he never answered them by words, he answered on the court. And the fact the Cincinnati and the Rogers Cup are the major warm-up tournaments for the U.S. Open. When you make it to one final and you win the other, that's a major statement. You come into Flushing Meadows as the big favorite. Roger Federer won the U.S. Open 5 times before, and if he does it a 6th time at the age of 33, it will not be a surprise at all.
Well, it won't be a surprise. What is a surprise, at least for me, Suarez is back. Didn't we forget about this guy?
Suarez played in his first match with Barcelona, 14 minutes. He played last night for the first time in Barcelona. It will also be the last time he plays for the next 2 months because he's still banned. How come he played? Because it's a friendly. His ban was eased. He still cannot come back to official matches until October 25th, but he can play in friendly matches. The Joan Gamper Cup that was played yesterday at the Camp Nou in Barcelona is a friendly match, so he could play. So he joined for 14 minutes, and that's the last we're going to see him play until the end of October.
Did anyone boo him? Did anyone try to get him off the court? Or
football fans are the people with the shortest memory ever, which means
I still remember
one thing about Luis Suarez, you love him when he plays for your team. You do, because he gives everything for victory. That's why he bites other players in order to win. So the fans of his team always like him. Same with Barcelona. I'm sure they're going to fall in love with him very, very fast. Yeah. He was applauded as he took to the field yesterday in Barcelona. They won 6-0, by the way, against...
with no biting involved.
With no biting involved, as far as we know. They beat Mexico's León in the Joan Gamper Cup, a traditional cup played in Barcelona just ahead of the season. And Suarez is out. When will he be out? Of course, it sounds like a soap opera. When will he be back? Just on time for the game against Real Madrid. Sometimes it seems it's all written in advance or something.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I mean, 4 months out of the court, it's not really going to do much, right? He's going right back.
Barcelona should win all their matches until Real Madrid, even without Suarez. Same with the Champions League. They should be good. It's going to be very interesting to see the game against Real Madrid, and it is going to be very interesting to see him with the other 2 Barcelona major stars, Leo Messi and Neymar. They were both very good last night. This trio, the Brazilian, the Argentine, and the one from Uruguay, amazing. But it doesn't always work this way, so we'll have to see.
And there's only one that really bites, so...
Yeah, true.
Oh, there's so many puns I'm thinking about now with biting, but I won't go into that one. Jonathan Regev, thank you. Sports Magazine every day at?
Every day at 7:40 Jerusalem time, 6:40 Central European time. Watch us.
Yes, we will be tuning in. Gabby, over to you. Geek Awards.
Yes.
From the hooligans to the geeks.
Definitely.
I don't know if
you're representing the hooligans.
I don't know if I should be flattered or not. I'm not sure yet. I'll contemplate about it.
Are there bully awards? Because there are geeky awards.
Gabby's proud to
are.
present the Geek Awards.
I would be honored too. This initiative is on the 2nd annual Geek Awards taking place, basically celebrating and commemorating the finest in geek content, art, and games. Who is the Geek of the Year?
Who is?
Not
I.
Not you, and not me yet. It's LeVar Burton, who you might remember from Star Trek, The Next Generation. He played LaForge, the blind Lieutenant Junior. That enough should have granted him some kind of a geeky award. He also directed a couple of Star Trek episodes. He received Geek of the Year award because of his Kickstarter campaign, which raised over $5 million to rejuvenate Reading Rainbow, one of the best-loved TV shows encouraging toddlers to read a book and not just to watch Star Trek all day.
Nice.
So he got
$5 million.
$5 million.
What did he promise on his Kickstarter campaign?
Just a widespread of good, high-quality content for children to encourage them to read, to have a Reading Rainbow app and so forth, just to make it a comeback in the next coming months. Now
he's proud of his title. It's not anything embarrassing.
There's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
It's definitely Revenge of the Geeks in 2014.
I agree.
Also receiving a prestigious Geeky is for best trailer and video. Legends of the Night, also funded via Kickstarter campaigns. Legends of the Night basically encouraged more than 1,000 contributors to share their stories on how Batman inspired them to overcome personal obstacles, basically to embrace and find your inner Batman. And this involves both children who were harassed, who were facing some kind of a crisis in their lives and seek comfort and inspiration with Batman. So that trailer, which is going to be a feature film very soon, won Best Trailer at the Geekies.
Nice. Where are the Geekies held? Should I have tuned in and I missed this?
I don't recall at the moment where the Geekies were held, but Geekies everywhere. Geekies everywhere.
Fine. Well, next year we'll try to maybe I'll nominate you for the Geek Awards next year.
Why not?
I definitely will.
Best Geeky segment.
Best Geeky segment. Best Geek in Tel Aviv. You know, although there's a hard competition here.
Yes, there's a tough competition.
Very stiff competition. Someone who's not really a geek.
Not a geek, but
not at all.
Not a geek. Gene Simmons, born Chaim Weitz, of course, here in Haifa, is now a bona fide rock and roll legend. Also notorious for speaking his mind. He recently sided with Donald Sterling remarks about the Clippers and his affair. Now he has to apologize due to his recent comments against people who suffer from depression. His latest comments received much criticism. Several radio rock stations said that they will now ban Kiss music from their playlist.
What exactly did he
apologized. Well, he said, I don't get along with anybody who's a drug addict or has a dark cloud hovering over his head, see themselves as victims. I don't want to hear a 20-year-old pot saying, I'm depressed, I live in Seattle, and then take their own life. He now apologizes, saying, I do understand and aware that depression is a very serious and sad phenomenon that involves personal and loved ones, and he did not wish to offend any of them.
And it's important. The timing, of course, comes just a few days after Robin Williams himself suffered from depression.
Yes, he posted a tribute post following Robin Williams' death, and then, with no apparent reason, removed it. And now it's basically bad timing. And he was condemned by bandmates and rock colleagues who said depression is serious, whether it's drug-inflected or not. You don't knock it off.
Yeah. Well, he has apologized as usual. The same story over and over again. Talking about the press and depression, there's newspapers are, I think, the number one victim of depression.
Depressed. British music press suffers a tremendous blow. We might not be able to read any more about rock star apologies. Latest survey calls The Enemy Wants, the shining light of British music press, basically the Brit version of Rolling Stone magazine, hits an all-time low, less than 15,000 readership on a weekly basis. In its heyday, it catered to more than 300,000 readers a week.
And it's because, of course, online content, or
online content. They basically stay afloat. Enemy, Mojo, and the likes due to their apps and online versions, but they still. The dramatic downsize is in print and in readership. And
it's worldwide. It's not only music.
It's worldwide.
You look at Israeli media, it's also
yes, but I have to
media.
say, as a Mojo subscriber myself, there is something special about reading a dignified British music in print.
The smell of the fresh print.
The smell of it, and the extent you can run a feature article that you can't experience in a blog and just a link to a YouTube channel. It has its own place in the world, and music geeks need their daily print fix as well.
This is why I'm nominating you, Gabby. This is exactly why I'm nominating you for the Geek Awards next year.
I would be honored.
It's because of segments such as these.
Yes. I'll be sure to thank you.
Thank you. But first, another non-geek.
Another non-geek.
He's more, I think, more of a Jonathan's type of guy.
Yes. Yes.
The cool guys, yes.
Well, jocks and geeks alike can enjoy the Pakistani Justin Bieber. Asim Azhar is a star in Pakistan, scoring several top charts hits in this last year. Now he's making his first U.S. tour and will perform in London. He said, "This has been an incredible year in Pakistan. My fans are unbelievable." Obviously, there is a larger Pakistani population in England, which is obviously in tune to whatever's happening in Pakistan, their homeland as well. So he's about to make some waves overseas on Western shores as well.
Hopefully he won't hang out, he won't, behave like Justin Bieber has in the past.
I suggest that he won't.
Yeah.
There are dead lookalikes, by the way. This is not just a euphemism.
Yeah.
He does look like Justin Bieber.
He does. He has that look and he has that sound as well.
That twinkle in his eye, that mischief, bound to get arrested. Well, I hope he won't. I hope he won't.
I also hope he won't, and I hope that he'll do well in the UK.
Yeah,
and
stay
behave.
safe, Asim. Stay safe.
Behave like a...
He's only 17 years old.
Which is not, that hasn't stopped Justin Bieber from acting out.
That's true. Or Miley.
Right. Oh, don't even get me started on Miley. Gabi Tartakovsky, thank you for joining us. Jonathan Regev, thank you for being with us. That's it for today. We're going to be here again, of course, tomorrow with another special edition of I-24 News Morning Edition. As we started, of course, the ceasefire has been extended for another 24 hours. So until tonight, midnight, of course, between Hamas and Israeli delegations in Cairo, who are continuing to discuss the ceasefire negotiations. We'll be back tomorrow. Next up are the headlines. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.